What happened is in the early 1980s, we had almost at the same time, within months of each other, the credit card industry was effectively deregulated by the Supreme Court, and the home mortgage lending industry was deregulated by Congress. Now, what's interesting about this is the usury caps were effectively erased with no public policy debates, no discussion about what the real implications would be. And
Can I ask you a question? You may not know the answer, and it's not directly relevant, but it's humanly interesting. Wasn't that the case that was argued by Bob Bork in favor of the credit card, on the side of the credit card industry after he was Solicitor General?
Now, I don't know on this. Marquette is the decision in the United States Supreme Court that effectively deregulates. So I don't know if Bork was involved in it or not.
But go ahead. I interrupted you, so go ahead.
No, that's all right. He shouldn't have been, because it should have been before Bork was Solicitor General. But we could, I'm trying to think what the years would do.
I think he argued on the private side, but I could be wrong.
Anyway, what happened is they deregulated so that credit card companies, mortgage lenders could charge whatever they wanted. A few years go by, because you may remember in the early 1980s we have very high inflation rates. We're just beginning to deregulate.
19% for a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
Beginning to deregulate the savings and loans. The banks are becoming a little more competitive. And then starting in the early 90s, a new industry is born. Again, very quietly, but it's known as the subprime industry. And that's the part of the lending industry that doesn't do the old-fashioned kind of lending. That is, they look at someone like Elizabeth Warren and they say, we think she'll be able to pay back without any difficulty, and therefore we'll lend to her at whatever is the interest rate that they think reflects risk and the possibility of inflation. Instead, what happened is they said, you know, someone from whom we could make really good money is not to lend to that Elizabeth Warren because she pays back on time and in full. It's to lend to her nephew who doesn't have an income yet, who's a college student, who is sporadically employed. Let's lend to him and count on the fact that he'll make minimum monthly payments, and he may even occasionally skip a payment. And if he's already built up some debt by the time he skips a payment, we could jack up the interest rate on that. And that may improve our overall profit.
You mean that there's a higher interest rate when they're charging interest on interest than when they're charging interest on principal?
Well, and a higher interest rate, even though you borrowed the money back at 8.99%, it turns out that most credit card contracts are written today so that the credit card company has an unfettered ability to change the interest rate. So the interest rate may be changed because interest rates change generally in the country, but it may also be changed because you missed a payment, because you went over limit, because you missed a payment on another bill, and that changes your credit report, and so they change the interest rate, or because you applied for a credit card somewhere else, and the current company found out that you applied for another credit card, and that changes your credit score, and so they up your interest rate. And what the credit card companies discovered is the profits to be made from lending to people who make minimum monthly payments, who pay for a while and then skip a payment, miss a payment, fall behind. That's where the real profits in the industry are to be made. You know, I'm not a very profitable customer because I do pay in full on time. 85% of the revenues from credit card companies come from interest payments, from people making those low minimum monthly payments, and from fees. Indeed, companies have figured out—
What are the fees?
Fees are everything from your annual fee, which has actually been going down because people like me don't want to pay it, to the fee if your check doesn't clear, to the fee if your bill arrives one day late, your payment arrives one day late, if you go over the credit limit on your card. Fees were about $1.7 billion in 1998. That's what credit card companies collected. Last year, they collected more than $10 billion.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.